This episode of We Came Out of the Sea is brought to you via an exploration of the particles and media footprint of one Citizen Bun Samuel D.P. 271178 to 160563, which has been rendered in the style of his other shonky media offerings for your socio-historical satisfaction.
We came out of the sea, became what we be.
Salzburg, today. And Salzburg, 100 years ago. As you can see, a lot has changed. And a lot has stayed the same. There's Mozart by the Markuskirche, though notice that Haydn is missing, as of course is the Forest of Souls. And here's the river, but look at all that tarmac and stone in between. Yes, that's a road. And where are all the plants and animals, I hear you ask?
And now we follow the path of a hare in the snow. Note, first of all, that she's alone. A rare event these days. Secondly, note that she's living in a barren, desolate wasteland. Such was the fate of almost all animal life in Salzburg and most every other where 100 years ago today. What caretakers we were.
Animals, I hear you ask. Well, here are some seagulls in the river, lying dormant, like all of the great ideas that mankind had already accumulated by the early part of the 21st century, that had yet to truly take flight. Now let's follow the river down and take a look at what they called Old Town.
We know the bees nearly went extinct in the last century,
And if we take the beehive as a model, then the 21st century children of our poetic, stone-making ancestors lived like crazed parasites in this once functioning, unmoving edifice. It was much the same in all the major historical cities. They were so attached to stone as historical document that they were literally falling over their own history all of the time. It's no wonder they couldn't move forwards. This from a wise old Greek man.
Δεν ξέρω πόσες χιλιάδες χρόνια ανάμεσα σε σπασμένες πέτρες και αγάλματα και πεθαίνουμε.
Of course, this is where 22nd century particle mapping really comes into its own.
We no longer need the physical manifestation of objects to remind us.
And here comes today's exercise. Here are 100 shots of shops, a cross-section of Old Town. You have 1,000 hours to plot a course through 10 frames, to weave your own socio-political eco-bio story about this strange market-led time of travel without seeing, space without place. You can plot a pretty pattern. You can plot a direction. You can plot a logical line. You can plot the darkness. It's really up to you. Just relax in your nutrient-enriched flotation tanks and go deep into deep knowledge. I'm expecting basically a book to come out of this, a decent-sized book to go on the shelf. And I'll see you in 1,000.
From one end of Mozart to the other end of his mother. This golden gateway may look innocent enough. But this old town shopping coup was actually one cute face amongst the many grinning red ones of the mega food temple god called Spa.
course, there were others, lacing and looping through the planets like giant hollow worms, offering comfort in exchange for... The churches in those times were like the dead bodies of giants, decomposing in plain sight, without anyone to hear it. It was tragic. Those huge cavernous miracles, designed to be filled with the sound of 1,000 souls singing, were mostly filled of three sounds: the opening and closing of the side door, click and beep of the cameras, and the rustle of shopping bags. These stone-lunged caves were just aching for what it was that we did to them. They had this strange separation between what they called art and what they called popular culture. It's hard to understand, I know. But so they put the art in big white rooms where most people couldn't understand it. And they put the other stuff everywhere. But it didn't really have a name. And as everybody knows, if you don't know what the devil's name is, you can't break it. In their haste, these global chains, as they were fittingly known, built buildings that no one liked. They were in so much of a hurry to sell things that they forgot to use love in their construction. See the American term mall for more details. Compare that with the beautiful stonework of the Salzburg Hauptbahnhof next door. And now, look here, a fresh building site, as they were known. As you can see, in the 21st century they still didn't have the tools to bioengineer their buildings. This was lucky for us, really, because when our founding mothers and fathers took over these globe-encircling chains, we could rapidly replace their depressing empty temples without anyone really minding, planting the seeds of deep community that we take for granted today into their vacant lots.
What you gonna pick?
It was the strangest thing. These women from strange lands were not celebrated but trapped into
You just normally get a loading map.
and it all turned blue, but we didn't know. But it all turned blue. Oh, why is that so? Blue, blue, like the sky. Blue, blue,
Sad as it sounds, the streets were not full of music in those times, and when they were, no one stopped to listen.
Unless it was a 30-part Japanese travelling orchestra, of course. But when they did, it still brought a tear to the eye. Although, not if one stopped a second time, as the musicians were as capitalist opportunists as all the rest, playing the same short songs over and over. Playing the same short songs over and over. The music made you cry, and then it made you sick.
We have found, not only in the particles of Bunn, but in the particles of almost every citizen of the 21st century, this tragic moment of disappointment felt upon the discovery that the source of a particular joy experienced as being given freely was in fact being given with the expectation or demand for financial reward. These moments of discovery hang in the particles of these citizens like seismic shocks to the 21st century psyche that leave lasting marks upon the entire pattern.
We've got choices to make, we've got choices. We've got choices to make as a species. We've got choices to make, we've got choices. We've got choices to make as a species. If we're coming to the bottom of a contra-teeth wave and it's looking dystopic, then I don't want to wait for the future. I want to tell it how it is, I want to help to make it better, but it's really quite hard for a sensitive fella in the future. One of the most jarring things about our predecessors were their personal augmentation technologies. Paper had been difficult, but networked image-based gadgets were worse. They were so awkward. Look at all that energy directed into the thumbs. All of our training screams that this is wrong. Now look at this chap. He has to stand in one place to access his saved visual records, which he has to view in sequential order. It truly was the time of looking without seeing. Grace had gone totally out the window. Now let's observe what he's accessing to learn more. As you can see, two people could be sitting next to each other, thinking about the same thing, and yet not have any idea. Conversely, they could be side by side, yet in completely different worlds. To see themselves from the outside, they had to reach out their own arms, or else they used sticks. Or they had to ask somebody else to help them, but then when they did, that was all the information they exchanged. They would part ways and never see each other again. And if we're talking about moments of grace, look at this. They had to contort their bodies so awkwardly to record things. And check this out. Look, he has to brace his whole body to retain a visual memory. Oh, cool finish. They were such ungainly cyborgs. At least this is quite touching, clustering together to look. But here, this is the baffling stuff of the 22nd century brain. These two people are physically together, right? They move together, arranging themselves in space as in one of our ritual dances, mirroring one another's movements. So close that they could be sharing intimate, high-density data with one another, but... Wait for it. Wait for it. You see, they weren't together at all. Their public body language was actually completely private. And actually, it turns out the thing that binds them together was some bizarre cultural object that they had no idea what it was, no idea what it was for, and they would never look at it again after they took the photo of it. Their faces on the windows overlapping with their faces through the windows. Everybody packed together in a box, wobbling out of the river. Not speaking.
Frames within frames, boxes within boxes. These ones for living. Let's take a tour through the suburbs of Salzburg. These are what are known as detached and semi-detached houses. Little apartment blocks. Each one equipped with everything they need to survive. You may not recognise these because they've mostly become completely obsolete. If you do, then you'll recognise them when they've been repurposed as some kind of primitive personal robot from the last 50 years or so. But these things were ubiquitous. They were everywhere. Every home, every family, every individual unit, all ideas that we now think are absurd, had one of these things. They're called fridges. Fridges. You can look them up. The fridge. A monolith. An insane monolith. As we all know, walking around Old Town is wonderful. It is like being inside of a drawing, which is clearly much more fun than being inside of an architectural CAD plan. They're not quite as much fun as being inside of an organic, planty, woomy, bosomy, living, breathing, pulsating, woven heart thingy, like where we are today. The wonder you feel in Old Town is because of the funny angles of imperfect architecture and city planning, angles of negotiation that were sadly missing in the 21st century. It was the time before organic curves and after funny angles, a strangely rigid time. In the 21st century, Old Town offered that rare comfort that when you looked out through the thin layer of atmosphere at the void of emptiness, if gravity were to stop at that exact moment as you stood there in Old Town, you could probably catch onto something on your way up into the sky. Now let's come back down. Not for the buildings this time, but for the people. 100 years later, and they're all gone. Nothing remains of them but the things they passed on. Their genes and their dreams. We've been on a bit of a downer here, so let's be positive for a second. Some dreams don't make it, especially when they're too big. But sometimes it's the core of the idea, the fire in our hearts and our bellies, that lifts us up. Takes us where we need to go, into the future. Next time on We Came Out of the Sea, life in the 21st century 100 years ago. So, it's still a bit of a mystery to us exactly how this happened. But we know that somehow, somewhere, through the distribution of information packets in the real, what they called the free press was considered to be an essential part of their democracy. In the next episode, we are going to do an examination of the sacral art of news dissemination. Here is a classic example of what they called a free newspaper in the free press during the early digital. The interesting thing about it is that these free papers were actually owned by rich people. Lots of possibly new concepts for you there. And they were basically used to propagate nationalism, another new one, through emotional manipulation of vulnerable groups such as the... Naturally, a backlash occurred across all mediums. Here we can see the beginning of the jumping on the newspaper campaign. It took place at the beginning of the pre-post-modern period and was soon to become a global movement at the end of the real and in the multiple virtual spheres. A real-world metaphorical meme for the early digital. As you can see here, the jumping on the newspaper campaign was used initially by individuals and later by large groups to express disgust about the notion of a free paper of the free press in the free world. See you next week's episode for more!